I don't see any members of the public here, so I think we can skip that part of the agenda and move into item number 2.
Presentation of the
Great.
film.
Yeah, go ahead there, Sherry.
All right. So from me to you. No, I'm kidding. So this is a children's story that was written in honor of PAE Engineering's 50th year anniversary. And they approached us and asked if they could donate this book to the elementary schools of the Beaverton School District, of which they've worked on many. So the book underwent a review and was accepted, and so they delivered these and donated about 33 of them to our elementary schools. And we've gotten a copy for all of you as well.
I help my brother.
Thank you.
It's a nice gesture, nice gift.
It's not as easy to read as our bond update report.
That's true.
Yeah, it's a really neat story.
Yeah.
Additionally, this is not necessarily a gift book, but this is kind of a promotional book that was put together by DLR about our prototype school. So that would be Bose and Sato, also William Walker and Hazeldale. So we thought we'd also gift you all with one of those, since you know them rather intimately, more than any other probably community member.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, this was an interview conducted about a year ago about the prototype, and they just talk about the client, which is us, but it's really a nice book.
And you see the client in quotations. That's Sherry and Aaron, right?
And Dick, actually.
And Dick was part of that too. Okay, yeah, right. Okay, good. All right, so we'll move on to the regular bond update report that you have in front of you there as well. And a little change to this report you'll see on page 2 is we took what was the, we had the graph of the bond reserve and contingencies there. We went ahead, we changed this page to more of a project or an executive summary of the entire bond program here. So we brought the notes forward with the major talking points. So we can kind of talk through this, and you have the full report. I know you've had that to look at. So we'll kind of talk from this, and we'll delve in deeper into those charts if you want to as well. But again, you can see in the when you look at the graph there, we've actually we're 349K up on our reserve and project contingency. So we've had some hits as well. There's some puts and takes there, but we had an interest payment that came in on that, which actually put us up in the positive on the growth in the program reserve. And again, you can see the bottom there at the 2.3. So looking over to the, we've summarized those, the estimated to complete report down below there as well. And this just matches up to this is the high level from the table that's in the back, the spreadsheet that we've always gone through as well, to show you the reserve, and that matches up to the table above. Okay. Looking at the notes on the side, so we're going to talk about the estimated completion. That's the first note there for overall. We'll get into detail on that. Our participation goals, I think we talked to you about the fact that we found an error in our reporting for those goals. And so we've corrected that. This is our last month report showed that full-time history on there as well. But we are up above the board goals right now for the contractors. Budget pieces there. Again, you see that the earning report, the $2.3 million that was increased, that came in. And then you see that we've had some contingency moves as we look at Five Oaks and forecasting our costs there. We've moved from contingency into the budget, 1.6 million there. Hazeldale, this is one we expected. There some over excavation that we've accounted for now in the budget. And then also Mountainside, we continue to clean up some of the owner-directed issues that were changed in that building as we go through there. We have a few more to go on that, but we're safe within the budget we have remaining for Mountainside to finish out the high school within the contingency piece there. And then also budget increases for Merlo Station and Ridgewood for the HVAC as we move to put mechanical cooling into those schools and do the electrical upgrades. Those budgets are quite a bit more than what we thought as well. And those are, the detail on that is on page 14 if you want to look at the numbers on that as well. I think we've talked about that before. But large part of that was, some of that is the increase in the market issues, and it's also the fact that with the board's direction, we moved to producing equity in all of our middle schools to have mechanical cooling at all of those schools. So that drives a good increase to the budget there, and also requires not only the mechanical work, but electrical upgrades to those schools before we can go into them. And then down to the schedule perspective, you can see Hazeldale is moving along well. We were having troubles with the roof. We were concerned about it, but the contractor has hired a second roofing subcontractor and moved most of the roof to that contractor, and they're doing exceptionally well and getting us regaining that schedule on the roof as we move forward. William Walker, looking to begin that here in July. Working through the permits issues, but we expect to start work on the access road here very soon. And then also in July we should have the GMP for this project here at Five Oaks. So we're going to talk about Five Oaks and walk you around a little bit here as well. But we're looking for the entire GMP on that pieces later in July. All right. So that's the summary. That's all the highlights of the report, and then I'll stop for questions, or if there's anything you want us to delve into deeper in the bond report.
So is the GMP going to be based on actual bids, or is it are you getting the whole market numbers on those, all the subcontractors and stuff, and then you're establishing the GMP based on the value in the market?
Yeah, we our initial plan was to set it early, but given current market volatility, it wasn't going to pay off for us to approach it like that, so we decided to wait until we get bids.
Yeah, there's a great deal of contingency in the numbers we're getting from the contractors, so
Right.
we made the decision to take that risk on us and wait on the GMP.
Okay, so then you'll work through the bids. So when are you getting the bids for this one, that one?
It's mid-June, so we said we'll get the GMP in July, so soon enough time to incorporate all the bids and everything.
Okay. So, but like you're saying, the estimate is higher than you hope, so you're hoping that the true bid will be able to reduce your, well, I'm sure they have both contingency and then market value, cost adjustments right in there.
Right, that's the hope, but we're still comfortable with our contingency that we have right now, and the GMP will include another contingency within it. We had a pretty healthy one to start out with, so it's just one of those things.
It's a remodel. So what are you going to carry, about 10% for remodel for your side, or think, or a
The
little less?
goal is, yes, to have 10%.
Okay. And then on the I'm sorry, you're not going through the whole report. So on the HVAC, though, that was substantial increases from your initial budget. So, I mean, market isn't all that. I mean, that's
No,
a lot.
correct,
Right.
correct.
So what value is the school district getting for the increases that were scope added beyond, I mean, just putting some air conditioning in? You talked about electrical, because there's a lot of money there in that one.
Yeah, go
So a big part of it, I think we're speaking to a little bit next on the report here, was the way that some of the repair projects were originally conceived. The original cost estimates were performed. It was missing scope, quite frankly, and it didn't really take into account the full picture of everything that needed to occur. A lot of those original estimates are going back quite a few years. Too.
Right.
And it's based on the building conditions assessment we do regularly, and so
Never gotten burned by those. Never burned by those.
Yeah.
And that's frankly
Yeah.
what it is. Plus the electrical
Right.
upgrades kind of was a surprise.
Yeah.
And it was not envisioned to do AC, which I know has, it's an incremental cost there as well. But again, we're redoing the electrical system to be able to support that and to adding those loads to the building.
And then you feel good that you tested the market on those? I mean, did you have multiple bids, or did you just negotiate with one vendor on those?
There was multiple subcontractor bids on both.
Okay. So you did get coverage? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what the market sustained? Okay.
The Ridgewood project is also a radon issue. So there's radon mitigation that we did not anticipate.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that part? Not for me? Okay. Maureen, you want to talk to your communications?
So I passed around at your stations, your places, bond communications and community involvement update. We have the latest construction update is from April. We don't have May yet because we're still in that month. We do have some things. Save the dates for grand opening and dedication for Hazeldale. It's instead into October. We don't have the exact time on that yet. Another save the date for William Walker, the groundbreaking. That is Saturday, September 15th. You're all welcome. You will all receive an invitation from 10 to 11 a.m. That's a Saturday. We find the Saturdays are well attended because it's easier on families. This is another Title I school, and so we've had both. We did a Saturday. We did Hazeldale on a Saturday, and we think that it's a preference for the principal as well. And planning is underway for a fall bond community update e-newsletter. And then we've got summer bond projects posters that are going to be, and a sample is in your packet for every school that is having work done this summer. So you can see it'll highlight the summer bond projects for that specific school. And then we had a successful William Walker Community Gathering event. It was kind of before demolition, last time for the community to see the school and take pictures and that type of thing. And they had 500 people show up. It was just fantastic. So, yeah, just awesome. So that was held in May 19th, and we just continue to do the rest of the updates and social media and what have you. So, any questions?
Who were the 500 people?
Beg your pardon?
Who were they?
Alumni came back. It was really interesting. Previous principals came back. Three or four of them came back. Mei Ling, Shirioshi, let's see here, Molly Ramberg. Yeah, Barb Evans didn't make it, but so they had some people come back, and like I say, alumni helped to plan it, which is really kind of fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda is you have a point paper there that's in your packet that's labeled the 2014 Bond Program Estimate and Completion Analysis. So this was a report that we've been working on for some time. We told you we've been working to refine the district-wide repair projects and come up with a good scope and estimate on that. We were working towards the summer to deliver that to you, probably in August. Or actually this meeting or May, or I'm sorry, in August, this meeting or in August at our next one. The board asked us to accelerate that and asked us to bring this to the May meeting with them as well. So this is a report that Eric has seen. We presented to the board at the last meeting there as we try to wrap up estimates as well. We took this as we completed those estimates and came up with the $25 million figure as what we need additional budget to complete what we usually called the $98 million project, the district-wide repairs. We thought it was better to put this in the context of the whole program and do the analysis here and do an estimated completion report for the entire program. So as you look at this, of course, there's the factors in there. We talked a little bit. The market is driving some. That's not everything in this as well. This also includes the $12.25 million that we talked about at the previous meeting regarding security upgrades as well. And if you look at the table that we have here, what you're showing there is in the grayed out area there are the current project budgets and contingency that are assigned across the project to get done. And this lists all the current major items left in the bond program. And as we look at the $47 million that's left in the program reserve, we've gone into what we've put as a budget increase or a program reserve hold against projects where we think there's still risk left in that, where we want to hold reserve as well. You can see our estimates as we look at this. It's the $25 million for facility repairs that we've estimated. The security upgrade is on the two line items there at 8.25 and 4, the 12.25 we spoke about. And then also the seismic upgrades at another $5 million that we'd like to put into that to complete that project as well. On the next page, we kind of talk about where those pieces come from as well. So the security upgrades, again, we've been through that with you. You know where that 12.25 came from as well, so I'll skip over that. The seismic piece, so our budget on this, as we look at, we've got the $2.5 million grant from ALOA to go in there to high school and do that work as well, but the entire project is about $8 million as well. So that's more than we projected initially to do in ALOA. And to get that grant, we have to take Aloha up to an immediate occupancy standard of construction. So that's a greater expense than what we originally envisioned going into Aloha. But for the grant to get that, it's a great plus for the school district, as well as just the fact that we're going to take it up to immediate occupancy and have a much better facility as we get done at Aloha. As we look at the other schools on the list as well, we're intending to go back for more grants. There's more. I think there's $75 million that's in the program this next year for seismic grants. So we want to go back in. Beaver Acres is the next school as well. Cedar Mill after that.
Cedar Mill, Cooper Mountain, and Beaverton High School, actually.
Okay.
A much smaller project than Beaverton High School, but yeah,
Okay.
Cooper Mountain and Cedar Mill.
Okay. All right. So we have those schools that we want to go into as well. But again, as we put those together, it's taking those schools to a higher standard in order to get that grant than what we would probably do in-house ourselves for minor upgrades. And so that. Sorry. Did you- go ahead.
Yeah, so can you explain the grant funding mechanism? How does that work? Is that matching funds or something against our bond?
Yeah, I'll explain it. So it's through the state of Oregon. It's an application process. It's kind of you submit a candidate project, and there's a whole very complicated scoring process that they go through to determine good projects. And what we do is, it is matching, but it's matching up to $2.5 million. So we submit the total project cost, which was $8 million, and that capped us out at the $2.5 million. So they'll work alongside us throughout the project and come in and verify we're meeting all their requirements.
So if the takeaway is if we didn't increase the budget by 5.45, we would not be eligible for the two.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so the next one is the facility repairs. So again, this is the 98 million, but this entails actually 450 smaller projects that are envisioned in there. This is some work that's we're about 50% on this work. A lot of this has been done, but we have more to go. So the team has been over the last several months, 6 months or so. We've gone through. We've developed better scopes on these projects because we didn't have full scopes on all of them, and we've done estimates at what it is to do those to the proper standard on these projects at the prices with projections as we look over the finishing the program over the next few years. So, we're saying 25 million right now, and again, there's some. We're trying to be safe on those numbers, so hopefully it's padded a little bit. But again, we think we're at 25 million to finish that work as well. Some of the big factors there, first off, is the increase in roofing costs, which have escalated tremendously. I included a graph with this as well. If you look at there's a couple graphs there as well, just to go the attachment one, which is the map of the United States, which is, if you look at this, you'll notice that we are the cost index-wise, we're number 3 in as far as the increases in the cost of construction in the country, just behind LA and San Francisco. So we're up there on those costs. And then the next page is a piece done, and this was done by RLB, who does a lot of our third-party estimates for us, very reputable firm. And then Gordian that does estimating as well. On the next page, you notice they're showing some of that. This is for the Portland metro area costs that they're showing as well. And you see roofing coverings is a 25% increase in the market cost. So, one, we're in a very hot market, and the biggest thing that's shooting up is the cost of roofing. And we have 20 plus, actually I think it's 23 roofs that we need to redo or partially redo. And that is probably our largest cost driver in that estimate as well. We talked a little bit about the HVAC costs as we're looking at that, the decision to air condition, as well as the market and one of the factors out there, the commodity market for steel, aluminum, with some of the political factors going on right now in our country. Those prices have gone up, and there's great contingencies added to that. So that's another cost drive factor there as well. And then, the unplanned expenditures, as we call it, and I know, Tom, you've got a lot of history on this. We've talked about this before. So this pot of money was expected to do the voter committed section, as well as be able to pick up other costs. And so there's other work here you can see that is important has been proceeded with under this project. But as we get to this point in the budget, we find our, that flexibility to do the voter commitment plus other things that are high priorities across the district has shrunk to the fact where we're looking at that cost increase as well. So with that, again, that's our estimate right now, 42.7 to finish the program, including the 12.25 recommendation that you made to the board as well. And we wanted to present this to you as we will go back to the board again at their June meeting to talk to them about the way forward on this. And again, so I'll put this out for your discussion and questions.
Any questions? Discussion. Well, I'll say what I'm thinking since nobody else is talking. I think, while it does make me nervous to allocate that much of the program reserve, ultimately the obligation of the district is to deliver to the voters what they said they do. And so, I guess, on one hand, we should be thankful that we're in the position of the strong financial management of the district that a similar conversation is kind of playing out in Portland, but with a very different end result, where they don't have the money to do the projects they need to meet their commitments. So I think based on the work we've done over the last 3 or 4 years that I've been on the committee with the cost control plan, I feel a lot more comfortable allocating that reserve, and I think it's important that promises made, promises kept with the voters.
Sticker shock.
Yeah, we talked about this at the board meeting briefly, right? And it's the first time through. So sticker shock, and maybe a la carte, like certain things have more value versus doing it all at once. Was what I got the feel from the board. And I can't speak for everybody, but
Right.
obviously in this environment, and some people would say security, like what's going on around us, like yes, 12 million done. But the rest of the board, everybody's really nervous when you get down to like 4.6 million. That's what I got from Becky and others. But they want to hear what you experts think. I'll be quiet.
Well, I would say, like in our bond programs at Metro, we haven't run with the equivalent of a, $47 million contingency. Typically we have allocated to the programs, and like the memo points out, you still have 20 million in individual project contingency. That's basically how we manage. We try to get the project contingencies right, and we don't hold a big chunk of money back to see what we can do with it.
Yeah, I think that's one other piece of whether we leave this in the program reserve or how much we leave there as well. One thing that's important to know is that even if we move these into the budgets of these projects, it's not expended, right? So beyond the 20 million, there's still much of this work in that 25 million that won't be executed for 3 years. And so if we had to make a redirect or make another decision later in the program, it's not that the money is spent; it's moved into that piece.
Other thoughts from committee members? Well, I think the board is looking for a recommendation from us.
On which point? On security expenditure?
I think on the whole thing. We've already made a recommendation on the security.
Yeah.
So is there an end date by which all this money has to be expended?
No. We're planning out. Our plan is to complete it within the 8 years.
Okay.
There will be some that will extend beyond that, I'm sure, but the money doesn't expire.
So essentially we are left with just, in the program reserve, we are just left with 4.6 million over the next 4 years. Is that right? If we move this.
Well, but again, you said you didn't expend it. You just allocated.
The holding pattern.
Right, it would be allocated in different places.
I mean, you basically have contingency until you expend it, and you continue to manage that resource down, that value down. That's why I'm not saying much up to now. Was that, I mean, you have to have a spending plan, and the spending plan gets you to an end where you theoretically have $0, right? I mean, and so it's just that you're going to manage the burn rate all the way through, and at some point you're going to have to maybe disappoint people that a certain project can't get done, as compared to having all the money. But you want to spend the money, I assume. And the quicker you spend the money, the less overhead you have. But and there's no projection on inflation leveling out so we don't see any holy grail of cost savings, and labor costs won't adjust. I mean, labor costs rarely go down. Material costs might settle out. You might not have the exploitation as much, but no one sees that ceiling where we're number 3. Yay! No one's seen any hints of that happening, especially with all the other bond issues being purchased and bought right now. So when I asked you about bidding, I mean, you're bidding about $500 billion in the next month that's being bid in schools around the market. So I guess my recommendation or my comment is that you got to have a spending plan to spend it down. You might not like it, but I mean, having a risk, but that's what you do.
Carl, I would add to that. I think that there is a rationale in trying to spend it quickly, which is that it gives the board more flexibility to go have future bond measures. We need to contemplate future actions. So having a good story where this bond measure ends well and the majority of the projects are successful and according to the plan is a happy ending that helps build trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't know if there is a fixed target to try to manage the spend down to 0, but if it is 3 years or something like that, I think that seems like a reasonable timeline. That can be part of the communication strategy too. Make sure people are aware of that.
Our community is certainly aware of projects that were advertised.
Right.
So we're constantly communicating about that. And I think the hardest message for anybody, it's easy if you're in the first year or two of the bond, but when it's an 8-year bond, you've got 8 years to ideally complete that work. Nobody likes to hear that they're going to be year 7 or year 8, but you do have to stage this, as you know. So.
Is there, I think this might be a crystal ball, but by the way, congratulations to everybody on the 70%.
Yeah.
Good job, Marie.
Very exciting.
Awesome.
So we should start with a little celebration. But is there any sort of discussion on the board about future bond measures, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll want to do it again.
Is there a time horizon?
We should I'll nominate Becky to go do that again. Great organizer.
I asked Becky 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You ready for the bond?
She's a great community organizer.
But I mean, are there discussions that could happen within the next 12 months versus the next 5 years?
I think it's at the end
Is
of the
it
program.
shorter or longer, I guess is the question.
Probably longer. Probably the next 12 months, we've got a lot of work to ready ourselves to do, and then it will become far more of a public process within about 18 months.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But one that this group will definitely be weighing into, too. I mean, it's Tom, it's deja vu.
He's looking forward to it. Look, that's mine.
Seems like yesterday. Cradle to grave,
Yeah.
right? But I think that's for our role as the citizen accountability committee. I think that having that perspective, that goal of trying to spend this down to 0 before we get too far along into planning for another bond is a healthy discussion for us to be having.
Paul, and maybe on the facility repairs, is it possible to do like facility repairs A and B so that it leaves that 4.6 a little bit bigger? Because I think when I was talking to Becky and Ann, they were all, we were a little nervous because we're going to obviously spend it down, but like making a decision 3 years before then, spend down, and it made people a little bit nervous. including myself, I emailed you that night.
Right,
I'm
yeah,
like, whoa.
I know.
I read this, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
we're going from like
Right.
lots of
Right.
reserve to like none,
Right, right.
Like I said, some of the stuff like seismics and you'll probably commit the money pretty quick with a contractor go in, so it's effectively spent, but some of this deferred maintenance stuff you were going to attack might be all split into pieces, I don't know. Instead of 25 all at once, maybe there's something there.
I would also say that we've been fortunate as a school district the last 4 years. We've had this bottom line to look at. Most districts don't have that bottom line. They have the contingency that you have already slated in projects. And as Brian said, we've got that 20 some odd million that's already slated for those projects. So it's there. Just more often than not, we're not accustomed to seeing 47 million at a bottom line. And I think everybody loves a much bigger savings account. But the reality is, it's initially when numbers were coming in, first off, it's shock. Secondly, then when I start playing the tapes in my head over the last 4 years, so much of this makes sense in terms of where our cost increase have come, what we've found actually in experience. But okay, this is a fit. It's matching to what the circumstances are. It's certainly the labor into things and everything else. So.
You're very agile with the ability to spend these last funds. It's not like any of these projects are like a new high school and you're
Right,
going to be
right.
short because it comes in twice over price.
Right.
And so you're kind of working with the crumbs of the program, sorry, bad term, but the remaining things, but they're manageable. And that's,
And we've looked out into 4 years and looked at how these projects would fall into place. Obviously, some of these big roofs have to be done over the summer. Other things can be done throughout the school year. We're over capacity right now as far as our ability to manage projects in our project team. But I think we look really good for the next 4 years, the work that we have out in front of us and the capacity that we have as our team. So what I see is instead of kind of a falling off of our staff, we're probably remaining fairly fully staffed through the end of the bond, and we've projected bond program management costs in that way, and we're looking good. So I just see a pretty healthy continuance of the last 4 years.
Well, at some point, too, it does. You can try to explain the complexities of bond premiums to the average member of the public, but somebody's going to look at this report and say, "Why are you sitting on, almost $50 million? You didn't need to, sell all the bonds. We could be paying less." And I think it's important to communicate. So part of allocating that money is communicating. It's going to cost more to get that work done, and we needed all that money.
We made $2.6 million in interest.
Yeah.
They're probably spend more on inflation and construction costs. A lot more than.
I think one of the places where you should be modeling worst case scenario is as far as security is concerned, because that is something that you don't really have a current projection for, and if something does happen, it will be driven by emotion more than logic. And so I think there should be some sort of a worst case expenditure scenario from the security point of view, because when you look at it, the TSA budget has tripled from 9/11/2001 to 2013.
Right.
So in the next 4 years, you don't know what is going to happen. The rest of the things you can manage and work around, but here it's going to be unexpected, and if you could project what can we do if the situations arise, how much more will it cost? Because 4.6 million in reserve might be a little slim for the next 4 years. And this is one thing you really cannot sort of put a precise number on, but I just want to, that's my one of my fears, because this could be a really huge, unplanned and predictable expense.
Right. So, and I think you're right. Part of that is, again, these funds wouldn't be expended if we move them. And I think that the one thing with this is, whether we move this or not, right now, this is the number that we're projecting to complete what the voters asked us to do.
Okay.
Right. So, if we don't go with the facility repairs, we talk about the roofs is probably the biggest one as well. That's a huge expense to move on those roofs as well. And for us to come up with a plan and move forward beyond the next couple, we have to either be able to move forward with confidence, saying we're going to be able to afford that whole piece, or we have to make some management decisions to not accomplish some of the items that are in that project, or downsize those, right? So, I mean, I can, if the decision is, we say, no, stick to the 98 million, that's all we're going to have for that project, we will come back with a plan that says what we're not going to do, or how we're going to downspend those things as well. But again, it's hard decisions. We've been asked to complete everything that was committed to the voters, and we're presenting that out. But again, it's one of those things, if security comes up, and we have to make that decision that says, another 50 million towards security is more important than this work, then that's a decision that, again, we want to be transparent and just present what we have out there for decisions to be made about what we fulfill and what we don't fulfill.
I think another consideration is another advantage of mapping more of the dollars to specific projects is makes the next item on the agenda quite a bit simpler.
Easier, yeah.
But although that's an exciting discussion to have, it's also sort of a high-risk discussion for the board and for the district to sort of have the appearance and exposed ourselves to the dynamic Brian's described about maybe you don't need to borrow as much as we went out for. But that discussion could look like it could look like a free-for-all too, right? It's that's not that could create signals that you don't really intend to send and aren't really accurate and are not really accurately reflecting information and strategy that the board and the district intend. And so this mapping or allocation strategy does put into perspective the degrees of freedom that I think the district and board want for the next round of project selection and prioritization. So in some ways, I think it makes life simpler and creates a clearer signal to the community about where you want to go.
It'll definitely stop people from all their pet projects.
Yeah. Well,
that's not all.
It might slow us down.
Right, it'll slow down some of those requests you probably hear about.
They'll still be there.
Tom or Raymond, we haven't heard from either of you yet.
I've said so many times, and everyone knows that I'm Mr. Conservative. It's in looking at the 98.7 that we started with. I just go back and I understand market conditions, and I understand inflation and the steel prices and aluminum prices, but I just recall so many conversations when we had 98.7 where the discussion was we're never going to use more than 50% of that. And Sherry, you've been in those meetings, others here have too, where we felt comfortable, everyone felt comfortable that the 98.7 was going to be way more than enough to do the projects. So if there's people in the community that follow this, and I know there are, like we do, they're going to, and they hear that the 98.7 has now been increased by 25, they're going to come back and say, why? And not all of them understand the fact that there's labor shortage, that they don't really care that we're number 3. You promised us this, here's what we had. And down to specific projects, we had 2 of our initial members of the committee that left the committee because they were frankly told that their projects that they were there watching, representing for their constituents, if you will, weren't going to get done. But in the 98.7, they said sometime in the future, maybe. And I don't know who said it, I can't remember now, but when we get to the point where somebody is saying, sorry, we can't do yours, there are people out in the community that are going to come back and say, wait a minute, 4 years ago or 5 years ago you told us this, and it's different. 4.6 makes me nervous too, Eric. I know from what I heard, the board was very nervous about it going down to 4.6, and I share that to some degree, although I understand that you're putting 25 and 8 and the 42.7, yes, it's a spending account. It's just how fast is it going to get spent?
So on the 98.7, when you say the expectation was that that would be more than enough money, was that prior to the launching of the committee? Because what the conversation, as I remember it, wasn't that there was more than enough money, it's that it was fixed. That the way the program was structured is that we do 98 million worth of projects, and if we ran out of money before all the projects were done, that was too bad. I don't think anyone ever said that was more than enough money to do all the projects. I think it seemed like there was a concern from the beginning that it wasn't going to be enough.
I can't tell you which meeting, but I do recall conversations where the comments were made that we wouldn't spend the 98.
My feeling is has always been, as Brian just stated. So.
It was fixed. And then the other thing you mentioned that I wanted to address, the committee members that quit the committee in frustration over their projects weren't on the list. I mean, one of the committee members who his kids go to my school. I have sympathy for his perspective. He was frustrated that there weren't projects for his kids' elementary school on the list. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know why the program reserve wasn't being spent to do that. So, but I guess in terms of the commitments made, no one ever made a commitment that his projects were going to make it on the list. I feel like the board has been really consistent from the beginning that the priority is doing the projects that were advertised to the voters and committed to.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. But everyone can have their own memories. I know that we had more than one small discussion about the fact that the 98 was going to be more than what was needed. I've got the list in here of the projects because Dick had them at a meeting, didn't want to give them to us, said we wouldn't understand them. I've kept that list and carried it to every meeting since then, and it was broken down, and at the time, my memory says that something like 58 million was the target number that was going to be spent to complete the projects that were in that initial list. So I'm not going to argue with anyone says that they've got the minutes. They're recorded somewhere. We could go back and listen to them if we wanted to, but it's not anything to sit here and debate.
Raymond, do you have anything you wanted to say?
No.
So the board is looking for a recommendation from us. I'm not sure there's consensus, but I guess maybe before we put a vote on the record, do a thumbs up, thumbs down. If there were a motion to recommend to the board approving the allocation of 42.7 million in program reserve, would you support that? So. Okay. So I guess maybe a question from Eric. Do you think the interest of the board is getting a unanimous recommendation, or if we had a majority?
Or we just have a split of opinions and we don't have a real opinion. That's why the board gets paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not going to be unanimous on this one.
I would also say the board is not always 100% themselves.
Correct. As we found at the last meeting.
So I guess with that, I think maybe what we should do is go ahead and take a vote, and when I make a report to the board, I can let them know what the vote was, and represent, or can help to represent what the opinions of the committee were as well.
May I make an alternative suggestion? Sometimes when these things are complex, people have to distill, but maybe, again, it's not to pin anyone, but maybe there has to be represented again in a different way and in a way that gets consensus with the board and so on. And I know you're under a time bind, but you got a problem. You don't have 100% in both houses. And so then that leads to either a representation of it, or you're going to be kind of fighting on this line here where you don't know which way you're going. So sometimes you retract it and say, let's try it again. Sometimes you might want to push it through. I'm just throwing that open.
Well, maybe the question is, for the people who are not comfortable moving forward with that, is there any additional information that could get you there, or is it? It's not that you have questions, or it's not that you have questions. It's a disagreement on principle. Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
Or am I the only minority?
No, I think
No,
you
you're not.
It's just even though it's in spending accounts that aren't going to be spent right away, understanding all that, it's still a substantial amount, and in my mind, it goes beyond what we have safeguarded the funds that we were allowed to be on this committee to look at. We never have had any authority to do anything, so it's really immaterial how we vote on it. We make a recommendation. We can't change anything. If I had a crystal ball, I'd like to see half of that rather than 43 million, half of it, and keep more in the reserve. That's just my opinion. It's not, it is based on one thing, and that is the facility repairs. I haven't seen, and maybe I've been at every meeting, maybe I missed it, a breakdown of what the projects are and how in particular, whether it's Errol Hassel Elementary is scheduled in the 7th year for an increase or a repair of $1 million. How much is that increase? What are the projects?
We have the spreadsheet that goes project by project, if you'd like to see that. We have it up. We didn't print it out. It's up, available to put on the screen. If you'd like to look at that.
The way we came up with the 25 million, it was a very systematic approach. We took all the projects listed on the flyer, all the actually voter-committed projects, and did a bottoms-up estimate where we went through everything and got as close of estimates for each of those projects. And that's how we came up with the 125 million.
With cost escalations.
Yeah,
Throughout
we didn't start with the original baseline. We kind of said, okay, these are our commitments. What is it going to take to complete all of these projects?
So will all these projects be executed simultaneously?
No.
So can't we just bleed in the amount from the reserve as and when this gets extended, or do we have to do it all?
Well, I think the problem would be if you do that, then we still have basically this kind of unfunded project deficit out there to get the projects done that we're obligated. Theoretically, people asking the board and this committee to authorize spending that reserve on other things.
Like Paul said, as we go to execute this work, we want to execute all the work within the budget that we have. And if we don't have what we think is enough budget to do all these projects the way we feel they should be done properly, we're having to make management decisions on cutting scope or eliminating schools that are lower priority, even though they're still a commitment, but just kicking the can down the road. It really helps our planning process to be able to know what we're doing up front.
Can I make a suggestion and present an idea to the committee? because while I appreciate you have the spreadsheet, I'm not going to be able to digest that tonight, and I'm not sure that's important. So, because I think if we think about what the staff is asking us, well, the staff and the board, one thing, it's really about planning, and how can the district project staff effectively plan for the next 4 years? So, and if we don't allocate, particularly the 25 million, all of that makes it more difficult for them to plan. But what if we made a recommendation to the board that said, yes, we can support that, but we want to see a spending plan and have staff identify what are the projects that we basically have to commit to in the first year or two, and then what are the projects where we can have kind of gate checks in years 2 and 3, where if we're experiencing cost escalation or other scope changes, where then they can come back and ask us to say, these projects need to go, or everything is okay, we can proceed as planned. And number one, like staff, would you be willing? Does that sound like something that would be?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the report every month, there's an estimated completion for that facility repair project, right, which provides that structure, and we can beef that up as more. That's fine. It helps us. Again, we want to be able to plan out that work as well, because if you approve a portion of it, then the question is that additional piece. Do we proceed with, say, if you give us 15 million of the 25, do we proceed like we're going to get the other 10 million? Or do we make decisions to say that 15 may be all we get, and we need to be able to take the lowest priority work or cut scope on some things down to get within that 15 million, right? So it's really, at this point, I don't necessarily need the money today. I need the confidence to go forward and plan to execute that work as well. And the gate checks would be acceptable.
And that's what I assumed they would do anyway, because that's what you do, and that's what we've been doing when something happens.
I think that the concern that addresses, though, Brian, is that the communication around that could be that some of the money is clearly left allocated in reserve, right? And so that addresses some of the concern about the size of the number going up by 25%. But still communicate some strategic direction.
So the team needs to sort the projects by the ones that take the longest and the ones that are most critical. And then they have to put the ones that have the shortest duration or easiest to execute and are able to be off-ramped. And then maybe they can propose a line in between there that says these are the ones we think are critical and the ones that my biggest concern is you have a team that's efficiently working, managing construction now. If you start dragging those projects because you don't want to commit reserve, then you're extending the overhead costs, which is got less money for bricks and mortar.
Right. And the overhead cost kills you. Like if this program stretches into years 9 and 10, I mean...
It's a political nightmare.
Yeah, it's not a good situation to be in at all.
So you want them to spend the money.
Right.
So we have this meeting, and then we're not scheduled to meet again until August. What if our recommendation to the board is, we would like to see staff present this spending plan to the board that lays out the process we talked about, and then it's kind of up to the board whether they're comfortable with that.
I think the board has an expectation. I mean, that it's going to be mapped out. And it was actually mentioned at the last board meeting that we would be giving monthly detailed reports to the board.
So we heard anything that we could get consensus on? Not that we have to make a decision based on consensus, but given that we have a small group here, somebody want to make a motion? No?
Well, no, I think we should make a motion. I mean, we have to move something forward. Or we send it back. I mean, maybe that's the motion. Do we send it back and not make a motion? I mean, okay, I make a motion that we send it back, have them readjust it, and come back and represent it in a way that we've described tonight that meets the board and our comfort level.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Oh,
Just a point of discussion. I appreciate the motion. I think that I guess I want to ask the voting body if that motion is also includes an intent that this should go, that we are aligned on gradually reducing the reserve, the unallocated reserve. So is that a common goal that we all have? Or do we want a large unallocated reserve? Is anybody?
No, I'm not. We could gradually decrease it, yes.
Okay.
I'm in favor of that.
I mean, it's got to go to zero someday.
Zero, yeah.
Yeah. Is that okay? So I asked the question because I think if part of the intent of the motion is that we see a plan by which the unallocated reserve is greatly reduced, that I think that's helpful in framing future conversations around additional project selection.
Now, can I ask a question of staff and Eric? So, I mean, I feel like I'm have the understanding that the board is looking to move on this sooner rather than later. So, I'm guessing that like kicking this down the road to August is probably not what was hoped for.
That was
fair?
while the board asked for our estimates to be done by June because of the security upgrades that were recommended over the last several months. So rather than waiting until August for this list, they've asked for it so they could look at them side by side.
Well, they can overrule us. I mean, right? I mean, they can still do that. We're just suggesting that maybe a better presentation on an action plan of what the process will be. Maybe it's a one-pager, maybe it's a two-pager, and then that's the motion that we can get behind as a suggestion.
What if, I mean, it's been a long time since I've done parliamentary procedure, but I don't think the chair can make an amendment to the motion on the floor. But, so, I mean, we've already made a recommendation on the security upgrades. And I feel like the seismic upgrades are probably something we could agree on. It's a relatively small dollar amount. Could we modify, or could our recommendation be move forward with seismic upgrades, security upgrades, added security upgrades, and then have staff work on mapping out the facility repairs with an eye to developing a plan to spend down that program reserve over 3 years or over 4 years and allow staff to effectively plan to get those projects done?
I'll go with that, yeah.
You just made that motion.
So, is there a second?
So
That's my
I'll
only
second the amendment. And then we have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah, and then
Yeah. Then we come back to the motion.
all in favor of the amendment to the original motion, say, raise your hand. Motion passes. Awesome. Okay, so discussion on the revised proposal, which would be to move forward seismic security, added security upgrades, and then ask staff to bring back a plan for the facility repairs. Any discussions, or are we ready to vote?
Second that or whatever we're doing now.
So, all in favor, say, raise your hand.
All right.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, guys. That was a tricky discussion.
All car, my friend.
Complex.
Let me pick
Yeah.
it up.
Do you feel like that gets you what you need?
Right, that's good. I mean, we can move on those two projects, and we certainly, we have more detail. We have most of the plan worked out already, so that's easy to come back as well. And we'll have this discussion with the board. Again, there was there was desire to move quicker than August or into September as well, but again, we'll present that to them and see what their desire is.
That's like 17 million out of the chunk, so that's pretty good.
Well, the board also, according to our charter, if they want something quicker than August, they have the right to ask us to have another meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can definitely communicate that to the board as well.
Sure. No worries. Great. All right.
Okay.
Next one. Aaron, you want to talk about our project selection process? Sure.
Did we include this in the handouts at all?
No, we did not.
It was actually in 531, the meeting that you guys had in May in Etaloa. It was included in that. Right? We can project it a few different ways. Do you want to go off of that?
So we have two pieces. We have the SOP file, and then we have the rating calculator thing.
This one?
Right.
It's this.
Yeah, so, yes.
It's in
So,
Mayo, right?
you guys, I'll just talk. You guys can read this while it's up there. I'll talk.
Just in this one.
Yeah, so it's there.
Yes.
So what we were asked to do is develop a plan and procedure by the accountability committee and the school board could help select projects to use the additional program reserve on. So we come up with kind of a calculation matrix here. What we did was we took the goals set out by the school board for the program. So those are going across the top there in each of those columns. Each of those, A through J, those are a specific school board goal for the bond program. And here on the left hand column is just a list of sample projects that we put just as an example. Some of these aren't even valid anymore. What we have done is we have assigned, you can see the grading scale up there on the top left. Applies strongly, applies somewhat, applies slightly, or does not apply. And how this works is each project is assigned one of those values to score each of those board goals. And we see along the top there, we've weighted each of those goals. We felt that some of the board goals should apply more strongly than some of the other ones. Like comfortable, safe, and secure, that was 25%. So this calculates out to make that weighted more than fostering development, for instance. So the SOP, we have an SOP, and that's attached to this document as well. And this really outlines kind of the process that we would go through to evaluate the project. The candidate projects would be submitted, online or Google Forms or something. We talked about they must be submitted by a school administrator, so a principal or vice principal, just to keep community members. That way, if the community mom or dad has a project that they want done, it really has to have the approval of the school. That would then come to us, or come to facilities, and we would have an evaluation committee who would be consistent and who would actually go through and apply each of those scores. It would be multiple people, so you get different looks at it. And through that process, it'll spit out kind of a total score that we can line up all the projects and see which ones have higher score based on the school board criteria. Yeah, there you can see. So I did all this, so this is kind of all made up, but you can see how each of these different projects shakes out as far as scoring when you go and apply each of those qualifications.
Could you go back to the role of the bond accountability committee here? I think it's on the next page.
So starting at F, the evaluation committee convenes 30 days prior to each BAC scores them.
Yes, we would provide them to the bond accountability. Sorry, I wrote this along.
So what are,
Here's
right.
3. So the recommendation is based on.
Right, so we would have a committee within, we thought we'd keep the work upon the school district, upon the staff. So we will have a committee that represents all of the district, and we will give you the ranks and the recommendations in the priority order that we believe. But again, that's a recommendation to you. So you have that, you can review our scoring to see if you agree with us on that, and adjust those scores and re-rack those as you feel is appropriate as well. And that would be your recommendation would be the one that would go forward to the board, not the staff.
And would that look like, so the availability of program reserve, would we have an estimated dollar value associated with each project too? So that we could do like a zero-based budget?
Yeah. So there will be, as the package comes forward, it has a estimated budget with it. I think we looked at this was the initial look to you would be to come to you with a kind of a parametric estimate that was a higher level, and then we would go back as you saw interest in those projects, then we would go back and do a more detailed estimate on it to clear that up. But just from the take of, we expect, I know we'll see. It depends how much money is there, right? And how much we approve. But if there's 30 million, we could have a list that comes in of another 500 projects that are desired across the district. So we can't do detailed estimate on all of those, of course. We'd want to be able to prioritize based on the rough costs that we think we have there, and then go into detailed estimate of the higher priority ones to allow those decisions.
And is the thought that you would open this up to administrators, as of June 1st, you could submit your projects and collect them all at once, or would it be a rolling?
Yeah. So the idea was we wouldn't need this tool for at least a year, right? As well, because we're looking to get through the major projects before we look at those. Anything above completing what's in the program, safety, security was later out. But that would be the idea. Is we would open it, and projects could come in and be added, on a monthly basis, and we'd just build that over time. And again, when the decision is there, it's like, okay, we've got 30 million in program reserve. We're comfortable spending 50 million of that. That's up to this group to kind of snap that chalk line and say, okay, we're going to submit the priority projects that have come forward as well. You also, when we say administrators, it's not just the principals. This is also the department heads across the district. So, from our side, we have a lot of projects on the maintenance side we will be putting into the system. IT, Steve Langford may be putting projects in as well, etc. We'll have, I would hope as we open this, we're going to get flooded up early, and that there won't be people waiting to submit projects. That would not bode well for them to wait. Right?
Vote early and often.
But
Vote early and often.
Exactly.
The other piece of this is obviously community interest, where the community interests might be, or where they lie. And I would say to facilitate that, it would still need to go through the building administration. Not that they're a gatekeeper, but it's to facilitate it. And there may have to be some reprioritization of what comes forward from a building level too.
That's my one question on the criteria. Seems like criteria I is maybe the one that relates to that community interest, maybe more than, I don't know. And it's only weighted at 5%. Or maybe the community interest in a project is some, maybe this is kind of the technical analysis of staff, and then there's some other information about the level of community interest in the project. It would be hard to quantify that.
I'm going to back up the bus. Can you go to the matrix? Yes, you got. I see a lot of projects that no one really wants to talk about, like, fall protection. I'm not sure fall protection is something that I'm dealing for my child would be attending school there. And so there are lists of these, what I would consider just hard facility decisions that you have to make. But across the top is the emotional aspect of education and school. And so it feels like a contradiction to me that if you were asking questions like, should we have 3 classrooms, or we should have a library, or we should have a music room, I would see that on the vertical columns as a scope, but I'm not sure how a public parent would score whether generator resiliency is more important than fall protection. So, I'm sorry. That's where I'm conflicted in this.
I would tell you, again, these are kind of made up. I would tell you fall protection is staff, not...
Right.
It's not for students.
No, I know.
Right, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm being a little rude, but
Yeah.
as a parent that sends their kids here, they don't really care if it has fall protection or not. So I think I think they're both admirable lists, but I think we're mixing and matching oil and water a little bit on this list. And you might have to have a second list that's more about facilities, stuff that this is if I was a risk manager, I would know how to scale these things out. And that's what I would want the district to risk the list on the left.
Car with a K.
Sorry. That's just a thought.
It's interesting.
So Carl, the column A weighting is 5 times higher than some of the others, right? Do you think that winds up accomplishing the goal of effectively column A is the risk manager's weighting, right? Is that, are you concerned that will be overridden in some cases? Or?
How do I do this politically without being painful? A parent doesn't really care about what the risk issues, and they're not knowledgeable about the risk issue. But emotionally, they do have opinions about whether their child should have a music program or a gym or home ec or whatever we call it these days. So that's where I think the parents' influence and the public influence. But I think that this document, if you're going to use it, which you should, it's an internal document for the risk issues related to at least most of the column on the left.
Well, that's I think you're right. This is the issue anytime you try to rank capital projects, is how do you stack up the, new library against generator resiliency.
Right.
And that's, we run into that all the time. Nobody wants to replace the well in the park, but they would really love a new play structure.
The water's really bad, but they want a new play structure, right?
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of these processes, they're really political processes masquerading as technical processes. So, to the extent this is a useful tool for staff and for us in thinking about how we prioritize, but I guess it doesn't solve all problems. And then it becomes to the board to balance that, they're the ones that get to make the political decision on whether the music room is more important than the generator or whatever.
I think the last two auditoriums.
Charter by that. I think put that burden on you.
I could scale as a parent auditorium work in HS Title 9. I think that's important stuff for the community to involve in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting going through this exercise because, the Title IX one, it's a compliance issue, right? So it should be higher on the list. But when you follow this criteria, it falls off. So certainly, it doesn't address every single issue.
Well, I was just going to say that maybe the takeaway from this discussion, it would be helpful to have a compliance / safety factor isolated from the rest. That's maybe weighted independently or something.
Yeah,
it could be binary.
I'm kind of a skeptic on this. I think I've spent more hours of my life than I want to acknowledge going through rubrics and matrices, and like, I mean, these are tools designed to give a veneer of objectivity to something that's ultimately subjective.
He's being blunt tonight.
He's trying to work his way out of the
Carl is wearing off on you.
I'll sit over there next time. I'm not so close to him.
So I guess, like, and we don't have to make a decision on this. We don't need it for a year.
No,
I think it's a useful tool. We just have to be realistic about what it's used for. You know, it's like a first cut sorting of projects, and then kind of the real work begins.
So I like where you're going, Brian. I did. One of the reasons I wanted to see what the EAC role was is because we become, regardless of the staff's prioritization in this process, we become the next filter. So we effectively take the pen on reprioritizing to whatever scheme we would like, which is risky for us. But and then hand the pen to the board who can further redline what we did. But it's but to your point, it's really 3 formal processes, and the final decision rests in the board.
And again, I mean, this is a tool for staff to give you information. That's what this is, and for you to digest and take away, right? So we match it to the board's goals across the top that they gave to the program, as well as why we decided to use that criteria. That can change if we want to make it to compliance. It is one. Some of these are kind of a stretch to figure out how they, how do you evaluate those, but we felt strongly that that's what the board gave us, so we went with that tool. And certainly those weightings can change, or in the process as well. So we will resend out this as well as the SOP document that we had in last month. We'll send that back out. And again, we just wanted to introduce this and answer questions, and then we can go into heavier discussions on this in August. And we'll figure out what color of, if you want cherry or oak finish in your veneer.
What I really want to see is a 4-dimensional matrix where you also rank on the 3rd dimension compliance and then safety in the 4th dimension.
Careful,
that would really help.
Careful, we're engineers. We can deliver those sort of things.
Careful what you
That's what you asked for. That's right. There's a couple people in the back row are getting really excited.
So this is meant for anything that's left in the program reserve, right?
Correct.
I don't think we should be in any hurry to
Right.
to look at this.
Yes, this again was direction from the board that they wanted a process developed sooner than later, so it wasn't a last-minute ditch effort, that it was out there and people in the community were aware. What is it that things are going to be measured up against?
I think one category that we don't talk about is reduction of operation costs. I mean, which one of these things have a real high priority? If you're going to save money, your payback on these investments are really high. Is that?
It's on column H.
Sorry. I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah.
15%, the second highest right now.
Okay, thank you. So that one would be a high prior, like 50%? Yeah, I mean, that's a good investment. Okay, sorry, I missed that. I was looking at all these other things, I was thinking again, I got caught off on fall protection and foster child development, and emotional health. I couldn't parallel that.
So just as a reminder, this document is on the website, the Bond Accountability Committee website. It was provided for the last...
It was part of the March 21st package.
Right. And we can certainly email it out. No problem.
So following up on Carl's suggestion of OPEX savings, so almost a year back, I think when we were dealing with the Mountainside High School, we thought after the school had been running for some time, we would actually get some numbers on how our anticipated OPEX savings because of capital improvements. Did we actually save operating expenses due to some additional expenses we incurred in capital, like green, lights, things like that? I don't remember. So
I think it's too early
Oh, it
for
is too
that.
early?
Just
Okay.
with
Okay.
regard to that, we're still tuning the buildings.
Okay.
We're still off. They're still off gassing.
Okay.
We're.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's too early.
Yeah, we haven't completed the the full commissioning process is not done yet.
Okay, so, but I think that is something that we should track, that money that we spend on capital improvements, with the expectation of getting operational
Sure.
savings, did that really work
Right.
out? And if so, by how much?
Any other discussion on the excellent project selection process metrics?
I just want to ask, Brian, I would just say, I agree with the concerns that have been raised, but I think this is as helpful an approach for guidance downstream as any. And my only request is that as the BAC would get this, I think it would be very helpful to have budgetary guidance, some dollar value, order of magnitude on each line item as it comes to the BAC. And then the other thing is, I would hope there's also communication at the solicitation of inputs from the community about the order of magnitude of dollars remaining in project reserves, so that we aren't getting 500 requests.
Right.
And that will also help the building administrators consolidate and focus their requests.
Right. Yeah, there'll have to be a communication plan with us as we push it out as well. And then we will have dollar figures. It's more than the table. There's actually, what we'll present to you, there's a project sheet for each project that you'll have with the dollar values. And we'll have a cost sheet as well that helps to align those as they get prioritized.
Carl, Paul, would it be helpful to maybe at a future meeting before the committee weighs in on this to talk about the weighting percentages so that, it isn't Aaron's, oh yeah. I mean, this is going to be vetted over the next year and a half. I mean, it's going to be, absolutely.
Yeah. There's kind of the three questions for the BAC, I think at this point is the SOP, do you like the system, right? This is for August. Do we have the SOP right as the process? 2, do we have it goes to that matrix, do we have the right items across the top hand as well? And then do we have the right percentage weightings for those items? And where would again, this is a staff recommendation to you, but we want it to be in the format and the priority that you want us to give that information to as well. So those weightings can all be changed. That's a decision of the BAC is what you want those weightings to be in communication with the board. And then do we have the right criteria across the top for that recommendation?
And so that's our discussion for August, is diving into this in a little more detail.
Right.
Okay.
And if if before August, if you have comments or whatnot, if you want to send those in to help us shape that would be terrific as well. Otherwise, you'll see Aaron's genius again in front of you. Okay. All right, so we have one more thing, and that's to talk about Five Oaks and do a quick trip around the school and just see a couple things. You see this. So one thing I want to go back to the estimate completion report. The one thing that I want to pat my team on the back for their work. So again, that was 450 items within that project that were not scoped well and were not estimated well. And the team over the last 6 months has gone through that and done that. And so although we're not in love with the number, which I'm not in love with the number either, what I would tell you is I think it's the first time in the bond program that we've had good fidelity on what those numbers and what that cost is as well. So the team did a great job to go out and strategically work those to get us good numbers on that project. So, okay. Aaron's going to talk to us about Five Oaks.
All right, so this is Five Oaks. So we'll go walk around real quick and look at a couple of the situations, but there's a few main goals for the project as laid out in the bond. Number one.
You have a sheet in your package.
Yeah. I recommend pulling that out. It'd be handy. So this is the floor plan of what the school will look like after the remodel. So we are standing right now. We are in this media and resource room.
So the picture up on the top right now.
Yes. Yeah. So you've seen that picture of the beautiful.
It does not look like that. You're right.
main goals of the project were, number one is to fix the circulation in the classrooms. Which I'll show you guys an example of what the classrooms look like here. The school was built at a time with learning concepts were really open and flexible, and so the classrooms here originally they were big pods, and they were very open. I mean, there's 4 or 5 classrooms open to each other.
Well, actually, it wasn't just the classrooms. There were no walls in this library. Your walls were the bookshelves, and they were open in the hallways. It's the worst place in the world to try to teach.
So as you can imagine, when that was constructed, HVAC circulation was designed to fit with that, and once people figured out that didn't work, they came in and built walls. Building the walls though didn't modify the HVAC, so the HVAC was terrible. So number one, we're going through and adding kind of little extensions and adding flex common areas, which is circulation areas, to open up, spread things out a little bit, give us more room to be able to access those classrooms without having to go through the classrooms. One, I'll show you, it occurs in 3 or 4 spots, but there's classrooms that are 3 deep here. You have to walk through 2 classrooms to get to another one. And what that results in is them using the exterior of the building for circulation, which is really not safe for middle school students. So another big priority of the project is the main office. So as you came up the building, you may have noticed, there's the entry is not very well defined. Like, where's the front door of the building? You can walk right in and without having to go through a vestibule like we're doing in all the security upgrade projects. You may also have noticed there's a tremendous amount of space in the front commons. So our plan here is to relocate, and you can see where it says admin on there. Basically relocate all the admin into that big common space, which will then accommodate a new entry vestibule and make more efficient use of that space to help stay on budget. So the project's going to be phased over 2 years. It starts this summer, actually. As we talked about earlier, we're working on beginning to start negotiate that GMP. We've released the first. Let me back up. So we have the project kind of in 8 separate phases right now, and each of those phases represents a move of students. As you can imagine, as we work on all these different areas, students are going to be impacted, classrooms are impacted. We don't have the luxury of, like we did at the replacement elementary schools, of shipping everybody out of here, so we're doing occupied construction of the whole project. Some of the students who attend Rachel Carson will be going to Timberland. We'll also be constructing temporary classrooms in an upstairs gymnasium. There's 3 gyms here. We're going to convert the upper gym to some classrooms, and that we feel, or we know, will give us room to accommodate all the students so we can work on these 8 different chunks of the project. This summer they'll be doing phase 1, which is largely earthwork and construction of the temporary classroom. So that's already contracted. We're working on negotiating the rest of the project right now. So, any questions before we go have a tour?
I'm sorry, I missed. What's the time frame for the 8 phases to be completed by?
It's 2 years. So it's fall of 2020, I believe, is when it should be done.
But we're operating the school as we do this.
Yeah, it's 100% occupied.
Yeah, with Rachel Carson out.
Right.
Up to
For the first year.
First year.
Correct.
You said you used up like 1.6 million in contingency. Is that on the first phase of the project? Was that over here?
No, that was for our estimate for the whole project.
Whole project.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a budget increase. It wasn't expended.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't expect more in the second. It's not one phase, and we have more surprises like that yet.
We will know a lot more once we get
You're worried. Okay.
once we get our bid results in July. We will.
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good question. So we've set up the phases in order of priority. So we feel phases 1 through 5 we have to do, and they're absolutely critical. Beyond that, we feel there's opportunities to reduce scope and still meet the commitment of the school to the project. So that's how we're approaching controlling our budget risk on the project. Good question.
If we didn't mention, all the portables go away. So we're adding the classrooms, right? The addition on there, and 9 classrooms. Chloe?
Yeah.
And nine classrooms added, all portables gone. Cool.
It's a victory.
And the garden stays out there as well. Okay. You want to do a little?
We'll show them this
we'll show them
fun
some
learning
things.
institution.
Yeah, right. So as you look in the library here, the pit, there will no longer be a pit, and you'll have a skylight in here. This will be a very nice, much different.